Okay, if you watch my other videos, then, my previous one, then you notice that I did change my shirts. This is supposed to be my gambler shirt, but it's not now. It's, I don't know, duct tape and something about shutting somebody's mouth. I don't know. Sherry bought it for me. Happy about everything. But I gave you a little teaser during that video of what we were going to go over. Now, I used to do these modify your modified videos, and I only was able to do like 2 of them or so, or 3 of them maybe, and ended up with a tech job and 200 miles of territory and not enough time to do them. Well, I've got my territory after, I guess, 5 years refined, and the maintainers trained up on what I expect and what we can do together, and it's a lot easier now. So I have time on my hands. Hopefully we can do some racing this year, but I doubt it. When you pick up a set of $1,500 pistons for $300, you're bound and determined to make them work, no matter how much money you got to spend on connecting rods, which is very sad. But hey, what the hell? It's only money. You only live once. But today, this is the ProComp distributor that's going to go into the 427 Windsor that I'm putting together, Dart Block. The ProComp products, I love them. They're affordable and manageable. Of course, you can't get this from Ford, but if you look and you know what I'm talking about, this is a drop-in HEI system, just like comes standard with most all General Motors products previous to 1986 or whatever. Very reliable. They got the little banana in the middle of them. That's your HEI module. But all that comes from a little pickup coil down in here. But what we're going to do today, it's kind of a secret of mine, so don't tell your competition. Of course, some of you fools in here are my competition, but we're more friends than we are that, right? I kind of prepped this a little bit. We'll just take the cap off. Easy enough, right? We're going to set that. Everybody knows what the cap and the coil, everybody knows what that is. Easy money. Okay, well, here we get to the works of it. We'll take the rotor off. Good tip. If you buy Klein Tools, best screwdriver that money can buy right there. So let's take this off. Get that out of the way. What I'm going to do today is show you how to lock this thing up so that when you're on the track, you fire it up, doesn't matter what you're doing, you're at the same point, ignition-wise, between start and finish. It's a real problem if you have, I've never seen anybody have the vacuum hooked up, so yeah, whatever. But it's also got a mechanical advance in it, and that will mess you up. I'm telling you, it'll mess you up every time, especially when the car starts to get warm. You know, things change. You see that right there? So that is your mechanical advance. It's got a little governor there, and when the weights start to fly like that, then it advances your timing several degrees. That's what you want to avoid, okay? Because when you lock this thing in, it's going to stay locked in. Now, one thing I do like to do also is get rid of this vacuum pod. You don't need it. It's just unnecessary when you're doing what we're doing. As a matter of fact, the ignition timing on the rotary engines, it's got a mechanical and vacuum. It's just like this, except it's got 2 different vacuum pods. I'm not 100% sure why. And the guys at Atkins Rotary say it works backwards because the rotary engine doesn't really hardly pull any vacuum. I don't know. I just got to take their word for it. The guy that you do need to call if you have questions like that regarding rotary engines is Rob Golden, Pineapple Racing. That guy is a guru. He's been racing those RX-7s and probably was it the MX-3 or RX-3? I don't know. But he started over in Hawaii. And he's been running those rotary engines for all them years and rebuilding them and everything else. He taught me a lot. And it was just all free advice out of the kindness of his heart. I don't know if that comes from the passion of the rotary world or what, but I'm not going to turn it down. Especially when it comes to a rotary engine, I'll never turn down free advice. Okay, so I'm just going to bend this up. It's got a little tab in there. Do you see that pin and that tab right there? You can bend it. You're not gonna hurt anything. Bend that son of a bitch up like that, and this thing should come out of there one way or the other. There it goes. See, that's your vacuum pod. That was actually the rod that I kind of maneuvered around. But when the vacuum sucks in, oh, it's got a heavy spring on it. When the vacuum sucks it in, it pulls the whole pod and pulls that back. And when that pulls that back, that moves this. You see it? You see it moving in there? Okay, that's from your vacuum. The other one, this one right here, that's your mechanical. So we can probably start with the vacuum. I don't know. There's really never an easy way to do it, but the vacuum is the hardest to secure, actually. Sometimes I've run screws in. I'm going to try to use some zip ties today, but I may not go that far. I think I can. I'll have to slide back here to the toolbox and get another zip tie or two. But it doesn't take much, really, because there's not a lot of friction in the distributor. But you bring that zip tie in there. Oh boy, I need my little needle nose. Probably another drink too. I got them here. Not far. There. Okay. So we'll fish this down through there. I may have to put my glasses on. Kind of embarrassing. Brother. Get that shoved in there. We may just take the module out. But I'm going to run a 6AN ignition box. And usually with them, you take the module out anyway. God, I don't really want to do it right now, but I guess I will. Shit. You take the module out, and then you send that pickup coil signal to the 6AL, 6AN, whatever you got, and it will amplify it and send it out as a larger signal. This right here, boy, you always have to have the white grease. If you do not have a silicone grease, the white bird snot, you need to go get some. We used to be able to get that stuff at Radio Shack. I go to Electronic Supply in Kansas City. You probably can get some at the local hardware store, but it's going to be in a much smaller package and cost you a lot more. Sorry, if you're not a techie guy, not my problem. Just get some. Make sure if you have one of these modules, if you're running a stock car and you have to have that module and you're not allowed to run a 6AL, get that bird snot, bird shit, whatever you want to call it. And then that set of wires right there goes down to your pickup coil. That's what generates the signal. And then, of course, that signal goes out here and goes up to the large ignition coil, the high voltage coil, about 25,000 volts, 30,000 volts. But you'll run this 6AL box you'll run the wires back in here and back over here and plug them in and secure them. And you can actually, they've got some little like wire loops, and you can put some little wire loops in there, so save these screws. But right now we're going to try to get this thing secured. It's just a pain in the ass, but we get this guy here like that screw, and our high-dollar Klein screwdriver that we've had for 20 damn years. Run that down in there like that. Get the washers up out of there. Bring our zip tie around. Got to get the washers down. That's important. Have the washers all the way against the head of the screw. Then get that damn zip tie in there, which is really, it's a pain in the ass. I'm not kidding. But you get that in there, thread it in. God, it is a pain in the ass. But it's worth every minute. It really is. When you get into this and you start wanting to lock this thing in, it's going to make a world of difference. I can't tell you how many people I've helped out there. They come in and we don't understand it. Every time the car warms up, it doesn't run right. And I look in there and they got the damn mechanical advances going, and the vacuum pod's still on the car. It's not even been touched. Nothing's been touched. And hell, that's no way to have it. You've got to do the ignition right, or it's going to end up bouncing all over the place. Okay, there. You see that? It doesn't move. And it doesn't take much. You can use baling wire. I don't give a shit. But it's not going to move. Okay? If the engine gets hot enough to melt that zip tie, you've got bigger problems than your ignition. Trust me, you do. Now these here, I'll usually just zip tie these together or take the whole damn thing off. We'll see how this guy's put together. It's been a few years since I've done this, so bear with me. I remember one time Brian and I put one together for some kid. He bought my car, traded me an old four-wheel drive truck. I don't know. I shouldn't have even traded with the dumbass. But I did. And he got that old Kosiski car, which is a 2-bar car. And I was competing against 4-bar cars, trying to keep up. You know, I mean, you had to have a hell of a lot of horsepower, but then you put horsepower to it, and it spins all over the damn place. So either way, you know, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It looks like I can take this wing off. But anyway, Brian and I put this thing together, and that was the last time I put together a distributor for anybody. And we put that engine together in about, I don't know, a day and a half. And, the kid just loved it, but he was not in a good place in life, I'm sure. I don't know. He didn't have a whole lot of brains. But I called Brian up, and sure as shit, we had that thing together, and he came and picked it up. It was a good car. It was stout. It was built, and I'd done some changes to it, welded a few things onto it to stiffen everything up, and it worked well. I was always happy with the car, but then the engine went, and I was like, well, hell with it, you know. Okay, I'm going to try to get this thing off, but these eyelets are drilled in pretty tight. Should come up out of there. Almost there. Damn it. I need 2 screwdrivers. So we got the vacuum advance locked down, right? Remove the pod, pull the deal in there. I suppose if you leave the pod alone, I suppose it would stay in the same spot. But when you get this on the engine with this giant intake, you can only turn it so far before the pot for the vacuum advance hits the intake, and it'll no longer turn. You're very limited. You take that vacuum pot on there and you can drop it in the motor. Everybody's like, oh, well, the rotor needs to point to number 1 whenever it's, you know, on top dead center. Bullshit. It doesn't matter. Put the damn thing in there, spin it wherever, put your spark plug wires on, figure out number 1, know your firing order, have it written on your intake manifold, and just go with it. You don't need to be all crazy, you know? It doesn't need to be perfect. It's a race car. I mean, you're out there on the track. If something happens, you need to have that thing up and running before somewhere between the heat race and the feature. Because if you don't make the feature, you're done. You did not finish. Nobody wants that. Of course, we all have plenty of it. We all know how it feels, and it's a sucky feeling. And some of these tracks will charge you a tow fee. I come to your track, I sponsor your track, right? Basically sponsoring you. I'm there. I paid you the entrance fee, you know, and anybody that's with me, either I bought it or they bought the pit pass. I mean, that's a lot of money we spending on the tracks, and then the track turns around and says, oh, you did not finish. We're going to charge you a wrecker fee, $20 wrecker fee. You know what? Screw you. I'm not coming back to your track if you're going to be like that, you know. And then, of course, their buddies, something happens to them, everything changes. They get spun out. They'll send those guys back to the front of and send, like, somebody that wasn't even involved, send them in the back. And I don't like those tracks. Those are like, I don't know, they play favorites. Not all tracks do that. There's a lot of tracks that don't, you know. But it's human nature. You can't get away from it. No getting away from it. Okay. So we got this, right? And then here's your mechanical advance. It's going to go this way and this way. It's still going to work. You know, you're still going to have movement right here. So that's the mechanical part of it that you need to lock off. And your rotor is going to screw into these 2 holes right here. So you have to have those available. So when you get this in, I don't know if you can see it, but there's you see the holes down in there? You thread your zip tie through that hole, just one of them. You can do both if you'd like, I don't care. But that will lock the mechanical into place. It's not going anywhere. I know that people think that, you know, it's going to get hot or whatever. Sure, but it's not going to get so hot that it melts this zip tie. That's all it takes, is just a little bitty piece of plastic. That's all it takes. Just like that. Just like that. And if it's sticking out too far for the rotor to get involved, if it interferes with the rotor, we can just tuck it under, just like that, and then trim it off. I got a trim here somewhere. Here it is. These are handy. I used to have, I've got it somewhere. I've got it it looks like a pistol, but you can't always get into these little spots with the zip tie thing. Use that in avionics when you want to reach inside like a helicopter or something. I got a buddy Steve that's avionics. What is he? Flight engineer, and you got to reach inside of the wiring harnesses and everything. And if you don't trim those off with the gun, you'll come out and your arm will be all bloody because you've got hold of all those zip ties that have been cut. They'll cut you like a knife. So here we go. We've got this thing set up now. See, this goes out to your 6AN or 6AL, whatever. Hell, I don't care. Don't know. Anyway, that'll go to your box, and then it'll come back in, and you silicone that shut if you want to. I really don't care. I leave it open. That'll allow the airflow anyway, right? And then it'll come back over here and send that signal up to your coil. Or you can go straight to your coil, which I've done that before too. And it's got this little cap. Brian will insist that this cap has got to be in play. Oh, it catches all the flyback voltage from the coil. Well, what the hell ever. You can run without it. Points ignition, it keeps your shit ringing. because your point signal has to be longer than HEI. HEI sends a giant spike, and it's more of a DC. It's more of a sharp points when it goes up and down, and it goes past the zero line. So if you got zero voltage here, you got bam up here 5K, and then 5K down here, and then it wiggles off because of that cap. But that little wiggling off where that flyback voltage comes back, screw that. You don't need it. Let the thing, it'll whack twice and it'll hit, you'll fire. You don't need the rest of it. But with points ignition, you need the rest of that signal because points ignition is pretty weak. It's only like a 6-volt system. Points ignition systems are usually the coil's a 6-volt coil. You can buy a 12-volt coil and bump it up a little bit, but you still have the same signal. So if you don't have a hot battery, that son of a bitch is not going to fire. I'm telling you, it won't. I don't like points ignition. This MG behind me has points ignition. It hits and runs and fires and does great. I'm selling it, so I don't give a damn. But if I was keeping this car, I have a solid state distributor, and I would put it on there in a heartbeat. And I always had troubles with my rotary engine that I put in the yellow MG. Just struggled. I thought, okay, it's heat. The carburetor's boiling. I put on a phenolic plate, and the carburetor quits boiling, but I still can't start the son of a bitch unless the engine is under 160 degrees. 155, 160 degrees, it'd fire up and it'd run. We'd be at the damn gas station. It'd just be embarrassing trying to get that son of a bitch to start. And Milton was here last year, and or so, I don't know, but here for a while. And it convinced me, hey, you've got this ghetto hood, just use the ghetto hood, cut some holes in it. It's just a junk hood anyway. Put it on. What can hurt? What are you going to do? You put your old yellow hood back in, the nice pretty yellow hood back on if you don't like it. And I was like, well, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and cut a hole for that distributor because this solid state distributor is taller on a rotary engine than the points ignition distributor. And you can actually close the hood, but it pushes the hood up a little bit. And I'm convinced I just got too much heat under the hood anyway. So I cut this hood up, put it on there, and you know, the second I put that points or that solid state distributor in, that thing took off and ran better than it did with the points ignition. Now, with the points ignition, understand that this car was dangerous. Now it's just absolutely insane. It's suicidal. But we can boogie down the highway 80 miles an hour, and we can pass anybody we want. We don't care. It just, you open it up and you go. The points ignition, not so much. You know, a lot of these cars have your rev limiters in them. And it was like that because you would lose ignition and your ignition signal would become distorted. And I was cleaning spark plugs all the time because the spark plugs were weak spark. It wouldn't burn off all that shit that was on them. Yeah, I didn't have 100% burn on my fuel. With the solid state, it's an HEI basically. I mean, I have a standard coil on it still, but with that solid state ignition, we're hitting hot and we're burning everything. I haven't cleaned the plugs since I put the solid state ignition or distributor in. So anyway, that's everything locked in. That's the points or the vacuum controlled adjustment and the mechanically controlled adjustment. There is no adjustment on this now, right? So when you put this little guy back on, I don't know that there's a particular way he goes on. I think you can, nope, there's the notch. You see the notch? The other side doesn't have that. The other side is just a smooth curve right there where the deal is. You can see the difference. So we put the notch over on the notch side. And like I said, it's just like a General Motors. It's made by ProComp. I think they're out of California. It's just Chinese shit. But you know what? This thing is actually very reliable. I have seen ProComp connecting rods and pistons or whatever. I won't buy that shit. I do not buy that. I will buy Eagle. I've got Lunati's sitting over here. I will not buy Scat. Basically, Eagle and Lunati. I've got I think it's a Dietz, very expensive Just bought one for fitment, and then the other one is an Oliver. But those are way out of my price range. I'm on a budget, you know. I'm not filthy rich, so I buy what I can afford, and I'm just really upset that I got to spend $700 on a set of Cali's rods just because I saved. I got a $1,500 set of pistons for $300, and I feel like I've saved a lot. And the pistons will not fail. I promise you that. They're the best of the best. But is it going to be worth it to spend, you know, the additional $300 on the rods? And I think it will. We've got to put bushings on them. They're a big block Chevy rod with a small journal, a 2.1 journal. With your big block Chevys, a 2.2 journal. Okay, so we've got the rotor back on, and of course, you know, like I said, when you get that secured down, take a look at it. It doesn't look like it's on right. See, that rotor's not on right. You got to pay close attention to that. Something's not quite right with it. Let's get him backed off and line him up a little better. There it went. Did you hear that? That's better. Always look at that rotor when you put it on these on the screw-in style. Like the Fords, you just slide them on, right? They got the notch. They'll go on every time. That's not just Ford. That's just about every model out there. So when you get that on, look at it flush and rotate it. And make sure she rotates flush all the way around. If not, it'll come up and it'll interfere with your cap, and you'll break that tip off, and hell, you won't even get to start the race. And you'll be out there like, well, I don't have an extra distributor in my back pocket, so I guess I'm just screwed. Yeah, you are. You just spent $200 to get into the race and fuel your car, and you hit the button and it started once, and that's it. So that's a bad day. Let's not have bad days. So check your shit on the bench before you go. Make sure when you do that, secure these two connectors, or just pull this one completely out if you want to wire it in. Wire your cap in just with a small wire. That's all it needs. Or just take the son of a bitch out. Take the damn thing out. It's not going to hurt that 6AL box because it's got protection built into it. So there's your shit there. And we're just going to pretend we secured everything because I've got my box back there. I've got a couple of different boxes, but we just put this back on. And again, just like General Motors, it's got the notch here somewhere. See the notch right there, right? So that's what you got to put into this little notch over here because it only goes on one way. When you secure all your nonsense that you got over here, it will sit right down in there like that. And then when you put it on the bench, oh, for crying out loud. When you put it on the bench, lock it all down and put 12 volts to that coil, and then take your wire that comes out of here. That's your signal out of your pickup. Take your pickup signal, send it to the box, or test it with one of these. You can take one of these. You can take this guy actually and throw him off to the side and wire it up. Just get on the internet anywhere, look at your wiring, wire it up on that internet. It just takes quick disconnects, see? Nothing important. Wire it up, hook it up to a battery, and then, of course, don't stand there with your finger next to it. You're going to get nailed. But take just one spark plug, set it on the bench, and ground that spark plug with like in the vise or the set of vice grips or a C-clamp or something, and then just take this and spin it around a couple times. And you should see the spark coming out of there. That's a bench test. It's what people that work on these every day, back in the day, that's how they used to do it. They'd fix these, they'd put a new coil on it, rebuild them, and then they'd bench test them before they put them in the car. That way you're not questioning, do I have it right? What's going on? You know, you can test every one of them. I'm sure they had a tester with like a clear case here with a bunch of spark plugs in it, or just hook a spark plug wire up to everything. I'm sure they had a special tool. General Motors probably had a bunch of wires that just snapped on there. And then you just rotate this guy with the battery hooked up and you can see every spark. And when you see every spark, you know, hey, I'm good. Everything tested out. And then put it back in the vehicle. Put a little grease on that gear. Put a little grease on this guy. And in there too, when you build a high output Ford engine, don't put a high volume pump in it. The high volume oil pump will cause more problems than it does good. Standard oil pump, high carbon steel oil pump drive shaft, and one of these, and you're good to go. So if you have any questions, just ask me. I'll do everything I can to help you. Well, unless I'm racing with you. Have a good one.